So Larry and Steve is the What a Cartoon Hanna-Barbera produced version of the Larry and Steve thing. There was The Life of Larry, which is a student film made by Seth MacFarlane. Seth MacFarlane made Life of Larry, which is basically the same concept as this, but this is the one that aired on What a Cartoon and was sort of right before he started pitching Family Guy. The premise is that Steve is the human and has the voice of basically Peter Griffin, and he has a dog named Larry, who is basically the voice of Brian. They're both obviously voiced by Seth MacFarlane. Larry was about to be sent to death at the pound, and then you see Steve, who can actually hear him talk. Everyone else just thinks he sounds like a dog, bark, bark, but Steve can hear him speak because he can speak, and takes him home, and kind of a bunch of kind of crazy pratfall things happen, like he's going to get him a new mattress. Crazy stuff happens with the car, it splits in two. There's all this like explosion with dynamite, stuff like that. It feels more like Tom and Jerry and funny cartoonish kind of stuff, which I think Seth MacFarlane, when he wrote for cartoons that were not created by him, like Johnny Bravo and stuff, you kind of get more of that Seth MacFarlane than you get the Seth MacFarlane we know from the Family Guy era. So it's actually sort of an interesting mix between his kind of creatively led stuff and the stuff he was creatively having to do at the time. You know, kept doing stuff like that before he became who he became. But it's kind of, I would say, interesting, because a couple people said on YouTube comments and stuff, like, if this show had happened, Larry and Steve from What a Cartoon, it would be, you know, it would get good reviews, it'd be fondly remembered, but it wouldn't have lasted that long. And I kind of think it almost, watching this, because you know the criticism of Family Guy is like, hey Lois, remember Back to the Future, and then like it cuts Back to the Future and stuff, and then like that's like all the time with that show, and they're always like the same kind of shots, and the animation's not dynamic at all and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see it done in a different way, and it's sort of like, I like the idea, but I sort of like, he was much better at the character part later. I don't think he was as good at like doing this silly kind of Tom and Jerry stuff with the Family Guy. I know they sometimes do that in Family Guy, and I'm not a Family Guy expert at this point at all, but it's fairly interesting how different he kind of was, and how much it sort of doesn't work as well because he's trying to be a cartoon but not working as much on character. I think he sort of works better with character, with more simple premise. There's not as many of these crazy animation things. Writing wise, I don't know if I like it as much. I have a fondness for this. I sort of wish this had happened, because I think it like is certainly like fun, but it plays a little too like, the character of Steve, who sounds exactly like Peter Griffin, gets a little too Mr. Magoo-ish in this, which I don't think was their intent, but sort of comes off because like he's supposed to be so stupid. He'll press the wrong button, like they're looking at mattresses, and he presses a automatic massage stuff, and it like messes with Larry, or like he's such a bad driver he cuts his car in two, like all these things, but just like plays like with Mr. Magoo, it's like, well, he couldn't see, haha. Not that joke's spectacular, but in this it's like, feels like kind of like, how could we update Mr. Magoo for the 90s, and he has a talking dog? Like it plays a little too much like that, and I don't think the humor in that is spectacular, but it kind of makes you appreciate what Family Guy is now. It does make me kind of miss what this could have been, but it kind of makes me realize like, oh, maybe there's a method to that madness of what we've seen in Family Guy currently. I think it's like a cute little cartoon. It's sort of fun, but it's not spectacular by any means. It's sort of just like a fun little What a Cartoon. Definitely had some promise behind it, which I guess Seth MacFarlane did go on to do, but it also makes you kind of realize, I think he understood his style, his writing style, and what worked for him a lot better when he eventually got to Family Guy. This is sort of like an interesting, odd transition point.